Hello, and welcome to Slow Night Ancient Tales. Tonight we continue the fourth chapter of the Korean classic novel, The Tale of Daebong. Under a sorrowful, beautiful moonlight, Aehwang sets out on a road that leads nowhere in particular. Close your eyes and walk with us into the quiet scenery this old story paints. I hope your night tonight is endlessly peaceful. At the temple gate, an old monk came out to greet the boy who had rescued Daebong, and after the formal bows, he said, "A noble guest has honored this humble place, yet I lack the strength to go far and welcome you properly. Please forgive my rudeness." The young master bowed and replied, "That you would treat a wandering traveler so generously only leaves me uneasy." The old monk answered, "That you have come here today is something heaven itself has guided." And he added, "This boy is bound to me by fate. Please do not think it improper that he stays here." The young master rose, bowed twice, and said, "That you would care for a life as humble as this boy's, and show such kindness, moves me deeply." The old monk smiled and said, "Young master, are you not the son of Governor Yi of Morandong in Giju, called Daebong?" The young master, startled, said, "How does the venerable teacher know this humble one's home and name?" The old monk said, "I have gone back and forth to your household for over 10 years. When your father donated 500 taels of gold, 300 sacks of white rice, and 3,000 candles of beeswax, this temple, which had fallen into ruin from wind and rain, nearly collapsed, was restored, and the Buddha statue was protected. How could I ever forget such kindness? Hearing your words now, I feel I am receiving great courtesy for so small a gift." The old monk continued, "You are still young. How could you know the affairs of the past?" And he ordered a meal to be brought, and when it arrived, its cleanliness and care were beyond compare. Meanwhile, at that time, Wang Sokyeon, the day having come, gathered his servants and a palanquin and arrived at Jangmi-dong. The night was already deep in the third watch. He meant to enter the Halim household and seize Lady Aehwang. At that hour, the young lady had lit her lamp and was reading the Nachik chapter of the Book of Rites, when she heard the unfamiliar sound of horses and men outside the main hall. She urgently called her maid Nanhyang to find out the cause, and Nanhyang rushed in and said, "Servants from Chancellor Wang's house have come with a palanquin and are lingering outside the hall." The young lady, pale with shock, said, "Coming in the dead of night, at the third watch. This can only mean they intend to force a marriage upon me. It is so sudden. What am I to do?" And she reached for a cloth to strangle herself. But Nanhyang comforted her, saying, "My lady, please calm yourself for a moment. If you should die in your grief and panic, who will avenge your parents and your intended husband? I will put on your clothes and sit in your place and take on your misfortune myself. Please quickly change into men's clothing and escape over the wall." The young lady said, "I will do as you say, but because of me, you will lose your beautiful youth." And she at once put on men's clothes, bowed farewell before the ancestral shrine, climbed over the back garden wall, and rose onto the hill. But under that vast, hazy moonlight, where could she go? Facing southwest, she walked on with nowhere to arrive, pitiful and sorrowful, like a lone wild goose searching for its mate as it flies toward the Xiao and Xiang rivers. Who could have known the only daughter of the Hallam house would come to this? At that time, Nanhyang saw the young lady off with deep sorrow, then put on her clothing and sat in the bedroom in her place, composed as though nothing were wrong. The maid from Wang Hui's household entered the bedroom and with elaborate words tried every way to persuade her, bringing in the palanquin and saying, "My lady, please do not defy what heaven has ordained," and urged her to climb in. Nanhyang lit the lamps and scolded the maid, saying, "How dare you break into a noble household's inner quarters in the dead of night? Whom do you mean to harm? I, who have grown up in these inner rooms, where would I go, abandoning my home? If you and the others do not leave, I will die before your eyes and become your enemy in death." And she reached for a cloth as if to cut her own throat, but Sokyeon's servants snatched the cloth from her and forced her into the palanquin. Alone, with no one to help her, Nanyang's strength was no match for theirs, and she was carried off toward the capital. Leaving Jangmi-dong, they traveled 20 to Bakwajong, and dawn was just beginning to break. Old and young among the people said to one another, "The young lady of the Hallam house is going to become the daughter-in-law of Chancellor Wang's household. She rides off to her wedding." When they reached the Chancellor's residence and she looked around, a great banquet had been laid out, cups and dishes scattered everywhere in celebration. Women old and young praised Nanhyang, saying, "How lovely! Lady Aehwang truly is a match for young Master Wang." As everyone showered praise upon her, Nanhyang stepped forward to the banquet table, and the whole household was astonished, the guests all stirred with shock. She turned to Wang Hui and said, "This humble one is not the young lady but her maid, Nanhyang. That I dared to deceive the Chancellor under my lady's name is a crime deserving death. The Chancellor is a man of the highest wealth and standing in the realm. If there was to be a marriage, a proper matchmaker should have been sent, and the 6 rites observed in due order. Yet instead, in the dead of night, you broke into a noble household's private quarters with lawless conduct, and for what purpose did you bring home another family's servant? My lady, having fled some time after midnight last night into the deep dark, I do not know where she has gone, and surely she will become a wandering spirit." And she wept bitterly. The Chancellor, greatly shocked, tried to console her, saying, "That a young lady as pure as ice and snow would compare herself to a lowly maid such as this shows just how fierce her integrity truly is." He summoned Zhang Jun to investigate the truth of the young lady's whereabouts, and indeed confirmed it was Nanhyang. The Chancellor, enraged, meant to have her killed, but the assembled guests said, "Nanhyang is truly a loyal servant, one who drew her sword the moment she heard of danger. Please forgive her." And so the Chancellor reprimanded Zhang Jun and sent Nanhyang back home. Meanwhile, Lady Aehwang, having left her home, wandered south with no destination, and after many days arrived at the land of Yeonam. Coming to one place, she found the mountains and rivers strikingly beautiful. Sheer cliffs rising into the sky, the mountains' shadow solemn, the trees thick and lush, and amid a profusion of blooming flowers, she went deeper and deeper in. The scenery was of extraordinary beauty, and even the very color of the land seemed to hold feeling. Birds perched on flowering branches showed off the light of spring. Yellow bees and white butterflies, great moths, moved about seeking fragrance. Kingfishers and peacocks flew in pairs. The drooping branches of the weeping willow, countless threads, hung low at the path's edge. The cuckoo's cry echoed mournfully deep within the green forest, and the clear stream murmured softly as if accompanying a harp. Going in deeper still, all was silent with not a soul in sight, the sun beginning to set in the west. As birds settled to roost in the trees, a lone horse cried out sorrowfully, and as the sun sank and dusk deepened, the moonlight over the eastern ridge painted a picture of a land as beautiful as brocade. The night grew deep into the 3rd watch, and still there was nowhere to go. Leaning against the forest for shelter, she sat in hiding. In the moonlit night over the empty mountains, the cuckoo's mournful cry melted her very heart. Over the blue-green waves of the 12 long rivers, white gulls flew in pairs, seeking their mates. How sorrowful, that plaintive cry stirred her grief, and the sound of a fisherman's flute from the riverside village carried nothing but sorrow. That is all for tonight's story. I can almost see Aehwang before me now, hidden alone in the embrace of a beautiful yet mournful wilderness, deep in the mountains. Like the wild goose that never loses its way, even in darkness, I hope a bright light finds its way into Aehwang's future too. Now set down every heavy burden you carry, and walk gently into a peaceful dream. Have a warm night. Sleep well.